Well, we're grateful to have you back. This is like, you're starting to hit like an all-time status here of like, you're getting into the double digits, so we appreciate that. Lots to cover. Let's just start with the people know why Combinator, obviously for the accelerator.
Yes.
But it's so much more than that. Talk to us a little bit about what else is involved at YC. What other programs are you doing?
So one of the cool things about YC is that this generation of leadership, for the most part, are all alum. And so it's been a lot of fun to build the things that we wish we had when we went through YC. The first new program is called Startup School, which is a massive online course that I think last year about 28,000 people participated in, and now represents about a third of the companies in the current batch. So wildly successful. The accelerator everyone knows. Bookface is something that not many people know about. It's our internal social network for all of our founders. It's how we keep everyone together. It's how people get to interact with alumni who they've never met in person, get deals. It has an investor database, so it's got all kinds of secrets on the best investors.
Yeah, I've been surprised. None of that stuff is real. I don't know that any of that's ever come out. I mean, it's been pretty tight. Has it?
I mean,
some of it?
People at YC kind of are good at keeping things private, which is good. And so there are a lot of resources that are kind of shared within the community that makes the community pretty strong.
You have, and sorry, you're trying to make me pass it. As I remember, there are like ratings on people. Does that still exist?
That exists,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That seems really useful, actually.
It's very useful. A lot of people come to Demo Day, and for a lot of founders, they're fundraising for people they've never met and they don't know anything about. And it's one of the most valuable things to be able to see reviews from other founders. And hey, this investor moves fast, makes decisions quickly, great, great, great. Hey, this investor moves slow, too much due diligence, I would pass.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've got Startup School, which one thing I love about Startup School is sometimes you'll meet somebody at some random place around the world and be like, oh yeah, like I went through YC's program. I'm like, oh, cool, like which batch? Like, whoa, it's a Startup School.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
yeah,
it's a start. We're
gotta start somewhere.
Whatever, okay, we're getting going. So it's really like opened the doors to a lot more people, kind of like the it's like basically the pre-accelerator.
Well, the way I would say it is that I think a lot of people, because YC has kind of become more popular, a lot of people are a little intimidated to apply. Yeah. And they're worried that they won't get in. And I think what the MOOC does, what Startup School does, is kind of introduces you to everything that YC does and gives you advice on how to apply and just makes you feel more comfortable that like you can make it. And a lot of MOOC participants did, so that was really fun. And then for folks who didn't quite hit that line, we actually gave grants to about 100 MOOC companies as well. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a really good program.
Okay, so the MOOC, the accelerator, Bookface.
Yep. The next program after that is called the Series A program. So anywhere between 6 and 24 months after Demo Day, for companies that are doing well and are ready to raise the next round, we actually rebatch them into a smaller batch. Say about 12 to 15 companies, and we teach them how to raise a Series A. And traditionally, a Series A is where investors have a ton of leverage because most founders have never raised Series A before. And so we teach them about how to run a professional process, and we effectively try to get them to veteran status. Like, our goal is to make it so that you're running a process that's as good as someone who's raised 1 or 2 or 3 Series A's would run. And you have another batch of people that you can basically compare notes with, get support from, so on and so forth, just like the early stage.
Okay, and that's more equity, that's the same program, that's same
No more
thing.
equity, no.
Yeah, no more equity.
7%, $150,000, you get everything.
It's a good enough deal, it pays for everything.
Pays for everything.
I would agree. Have you felt pressure as the markets have shifted, and it's really in the, which is great for us as entrepreneurs, it's really shifted towards entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And you all have made some shifts over time in how you've done it. I think it started at like $15,000 or $20,000 in equity.
Yep.
And for the same amount of equity. Have you felt pressure to adjust the model or to raise it or to change it?
So within the last 12 months, we actually increased from 120 to 150. And a lot of that reason was because of how expensive housing is in the Bay Area. So we figured we would just make it clear to founders, hey, look, 30K should easily cover
last
housing.
you another 2 weeks.
Yeah, should easily cover housing for 4 to 6 months, so you can spend the 120 on your business. But no, I mean, I think the market has been, good for YC founders. Valuations are great on demo day. Typically, YC pays for itself literally on demo day.
Yeah. And is there some like range of that you see in terms either a bump or an average that you see people coming out of YC?
So typical companies coming out of YC can expect to raise at between a $6 and $12 million cap. If you're in kind of the top third and investors are swarming, that 12 can turn into 15, 18, 20, 25 or higher. And then some number of companies will raise a Series A right out of demo day every batch.
Yeah, I had a friend that I went to college with who raised at even, I think it was closer to 40 out of demo day. Maybe that's not.
I don't recommend that, but that does happen.
It happens.
It does happen.
So then you've got the Series A program, and then what happens after? What's the next thing?
The next program is the growth program. So the growth program is for post-product market fit companies, and it's really designed for CEOs who are now responsible for building and scaling their organization, as opposed to figuring out what product the market wants. And so when founders come to us and they say, how do I hire a VP of sales? How do I have an exec team? How do I manage a company of 50 to 100 people that's growing quickly? How do I scale hiring? How do I scale HR? How do I create values and mission that can kind of bind all of my employees together? All of those things are hard to learn, and most of us just made mistakes doing them. So we rebatch companies in the 50 to 100 employee range growing quickly, and we basically bring in other YC alum who are further along to share all of their experience around this company building advice. And that's kind of the continuum from before you even do YC all the way through you're a fast growing company, post-product market fit. We want to help you at every step.
How many people work at Y Combinator?
About 50.
50, okay. Yeah. And what are the main differences between you as CEO and PG, Paul Graham, when he was CEO?
So I think one of the things that PG did amazingly well is establish the kind of core culture and advice that YC gives founders in the early stage. And that exact playbook is what we teach today. It's what we learned from PG. It's what we tried to do in our startups, sometimes failed, but tried, and what we teach today. The second thing that PG and Jessica really invented was the batch model. It's a lot easier for founders when they're with founders who are like them. And so we've actually tried to replicate both of those cores and everything else that we do. You're always with a batch of other people that you can get support from, and we're always giving you the kind of core basic YC advice. I think during my time, what I've been trying to figure out how to do is how do you organize YC to accommodate more founders? One of our core thoughts is if deserving people are applying to YC, we want YC to be able to scale to accommodate them. The last batch, we got almost 12,000 applicants, and we had to figure out how to scale YC to accommodate it. So we went from about 140 companies in the batch previous to about 205 in this batch. Yeah, so that takes a little work.
I wonder, is wearing cargo shorts, is that a requirement that he has laid out? That he said you can do anything you want with YC, but you have to continue wearing
It's actually
cargo
like
shorts.
Awkwardly embarrassing that we both like cargo shorts.
It's also like 45,
I think Sam does too. It's horrible.
Okay, so not a requirement.
Not a requirement.
Okay.
But maybe we should consider that.
So I think one thing that I found interesting over the years with Y Combinator is that it feels to me like a lot, and this is just maybe my own bias of my own sample size around me, but I feel like a lot more people are getting interviewed, and statistically, I mean, a lot, percentage-wise, a lot of more people are getting in because you're growing the program. But I spoke with a founder yesterday at the show that said that he had been interviewed in the same batch, like he was interviewed 3 times just by different partners. I think one group interviewed him, then another, and I just wonder. I feel like I'm hearing about a lot of interviews. I'm not necessarily all those people aren't getting in, but I wonder, do you use the interviews now differently than used to? Like, are they used as a way to coach people more and to say, like, look, we don't even know that you're going to be ready when we interview you this time, but we see the potential. We want to encourage you to really come back next time.
No, not really. So we do 2 types of interviews. In the application phase, we do video interviews. Those are online interviews between the founding team and one YC partner. And then in the interview stage, we do interviews and re-interviews. I would argue that the whole purpose of interviews is to get a YC partner to yes. And so
one partner, or
all you need is one partner.
One partner.
All you need is one partner. And so for companies where we're unsure whether or not they should be invited to interviews or not, the easiest way to kind of clarify that is to invite them to a video interview. And then for companies that do a single interview during the interview stage and we're unsure whether or not they should be in YC, we think to ourselves, let's re-interview them with another group. Maybe they can find someone in that group who will be their strong yes. So a lot of the process is designed to make sure that as many partners as possible get an opportunity to say yes to the company. We are far more focused on saying yes than trying to predict who's going to be the absolute best company. That's very, very hard.
I think one of the things too about Y Combinator that I, as a founder who applied to Y Combinator at one point, really appreciated and also, was angry about for like 2 days, but when I didn't get in, but it's the fact that you all actually give a real reason.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's thoughtful, and you're doing it at scale. 12,000 companies or whatever. You're trying to give, you can't, when somebody comes in for an interview, you have real reasons for why they did or didn't get accepted. And I think it's a very thoughtful thing to do, and I'm sure you get pushback on it from them initially, but virtually no investors do that. Even I don't know why no one's copied that. You've been doing that for maybe since the beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't know why investors aren't doing that. It seems like such an easy thing to do, to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
To like, these are the reasons why we said no. You always say we were wrong lots of times, so we may be wrong here. But I wonder, like, is that? How do you all execute that? How do you think about saying no? We know when you say yes, but how do you think about saying no?
Well, talking about some of the things that come from PG and Jessica and kind of the original YC, I think they built YC in reaction to how dysfunctional fundraising is typically. And it's dysfunctional in 2 ways. It's not transparent. You don't know how many meetings it's going to take to get to a yes or a no, even a no, which is what you would want. And then also, the reasons are never made clear. And we actually advise YC companies on this. We say, for the vast majority of investors, believe the no, don't believe the why. And I think the thing I've learned is for the majority of investors, it doesn't really benefit them to give the reasons. And they're a little afraid that if they give real feedback, the founder's going to think they're an asshole. I think YC operates differently.
Are you? If you give real feedback?
I think it's great. I know as a founder, I appreciated real feedback, and I rarely.
Did you ever go back to an investor who told you no, who gave you? Most don't. So, you've raised money in a bunch of different companies.
Yeah.
Did you put them on a blacklist? Did you?
No.
People that said no to you. Did you come back to them, or
did
you?
Okay. Let's say it this way. I remember every single person who said no to me.
Yeah.
Every single VC. Yes. And that won't go away. And they would have made money. Right? Man, I feel like maybe I was doing them a favor. And so you definitely remember that. But
do any of them come back and actually try to clear the air? Because I feel like some of them that I've they kind of avoid, these are people that I would have, even some of them have been my friends, and sometimes they kind of avoid me. When I see them, and then they'll wait, where'd that person go? I was going to bump right into it. Do you have that, or do you have people that hey man, I'm sorry, I just blew it. I had a bad day.
There was one investor who literally had offices right below our office. Who didn't?
Which company is this?
This is for Twitch. For Twitch. Who didn't invest?
Were they friendly with you?
Yeah, they're fine. Yeah, but they mentioned it in passing. But no, it doesn't come up at all ever. Yeah, no. And it's funny because it was the same way with Airbnb. Before Airbnb did YC, I introduced them to all of our angel investors.
You were one of their first advisors.
Yeah, and they all said no. One of them actually, PB, famously, this guy named Paul Buhaidu, works at YC. I sent the intro, and he didn't reply for 2.5 years. And he replied to the intro when Airbnb was on stage at YC as a guest speaker, saying, I guess I missed that one. Well,
my bad.
I tried my best.
What shifts are you seeing? The trend over the last 20 or 30 years is that entrepreneurship is actually in decline. It's hard to, we don't sort of naturally think that because it's front and center of mainstream news every day and even in Hollywood and other places. But sort of the tech industry and startups is hot as it's ever been. But
yep.
Are we, you have the most applications you've ever had. Yep. So, and some would say that maybe it's not declining for you, but how do you see the tech industry right now with the investors and startups and the people building those?
I think that there are maybe 2 trends I'm not excited about and 1 trend I am. So the trend that I am excited about is that we see more and more founders who explicitly are creating companies to make a world a better place. And I feel like in the early days of YC, so much wasn't built yet on the internet. It was much more about just kind of solving the basic problems. And it was more about just kind of having fun, really, to be honest. And I think now a lot more founders come into YC with a social mission. So that's very positive. I think the 2 negatives are, unfortunately, a lot of the large tech companies have extremely smart founders, and they basically understand that new people like them are going to be disrupting them. And they're proactively working to make sure that they can't be disrupted. And that's actually reducing innovation. Many of the most important distribution paths right now are now being controlled by the large tech companies in a way that it's never been controlled before. So messaging is controlled by Facebook. Advertising is controlled by Facebook and Google, and prices are priced accordingly. And email is controlled by Google. And those are 3 of the best ways to get the word out about a product. So that's really challenging. And then I think the unfortunate kind of final negative is that I still don't think the investing community has woken up to the core thesis of YC. The core thesis that the ability to network to an investor is no longer the most important thing that should be considered when we're trying to figure out whether to fund a company. And I think that, investors are still not open to this new reality that the best builders might not be the best networkers. And that's unfortunate because YC's been around for a while and that's been our core thesis, and I think we've proven it, but the rest of the community needs to catch up.
In 2010, and I can just remember so many people talking about building accelerators. I mean, it was like, if we go through these cycles and it's like, hey, what are you building? It's like, I'm building a driving app and you can pick people up. It's like, kind of like Lyft, Uber. Yeah, but it's for it's for hipsters. And then it's like, hey, what are you building? It's like, oh, I'm building this this coupon thing. It's like, is it kind of like Groupon? It's like, yeah, but it's got a really big focus on shoes. And then and so we went through these phases, and at one point it was this phase of accelerators. But has it surprised you that YC is basically like zero-sum game in accelerators? I mean, there was thousands and thousands, and there are not anymore. And there's really, there's basically you guys who have, taking up an unbelievable size of that market. Has that surprised you, or do you expect that? Or
it has not surprised me for a couple reasons. One, accelerators are not good businesses. PG and Jessica had to invest a disproportionate amount of time and money for a very long time before they saw any return. And I think that people don't realize that. I think the second thing is that it's a hell of a lot easier to start a startup accelerator if you've been somewhat successful doing startups on your own. And it's not only is it a bad business, but I wouldn't recommend it as anyone's first business. And then I think that the last thing is that...
It seems funny, sorry, but it seems funny too that people are giving startups advice that literally have never built a startup. I don't understand. Everyone became a startup advisor at some point. Now everyone's an investor. But I don't, these
It makes it a little easier for us.
Yeah. That makes sense.
To be honest. And then I think the last thing is that I think that the focus has been on YC maybe for the last 3 to 5 years. And unfortunately, a lot of accelerators have tried to copy YC during that phase when they really should have been looking at what YC looked like in 2005. Very small, very technically focused, extremely low budget. And like most things, if you try to start them at scale, they're not going to work as well or at all.
That's a good insight. I'd love to kind of finish here talking about why it's hard for some companies to raise.
Yep.
And I wonder if we could just start by just talk us through the economics of an investor. If I'm an investor, how do I think about an investment in terms of me myself making money?
So I often ask this question to founders. I often say, how much money do you think a VC makes if you sell your company for $1 billion? And what's clear is that if you sell your company for $1 billion, you're going to make a lot of money. Unless you've made some horrible mistakes along the way, you're going to do just fine. And the math for the VC is actually interesting. So this is back of the envelope. It's not perfect, but to give you a basic idea, imagine that VC firm owned 20% of your company. Imagine there were 5 partners. So you sell for $1 billion. That's $200 million that comes to the firm. That's split up 80-20 between the VC firm partners and their investors, right? So right off the bat, that 200 turns into 40. Now that 40 is split up amongst the 5 partners, right? Then you pay taxes. So when you look at a $1 billion company, it's very realistic that the VC partner that invested in it might only make under $10 million. And I think this is something that founders don't realize when they're thinking about how they pitch their business and they're thinking about how big their business could be. The economic reality is that most investors really, really care about the potential to invest in 10 to $100 billion companies for the simple reason that the math works better for them personally. And like, you can't expect someone to not operate by personal incentive. So oftentimes a lot of what we have to do with founders is talk to them about like, what could their business be if it was huge? Like, what's the maximum impact they would want to have? And talk about it, when you're pitching a Series A investor, talk about it that way, even though you're still executing on it in a very micro scale. And like, this is something that like veterans, like people who've done multiple businesses understand better, and that's often why they can raise money faster. But it's a training thing. You can train anyone to think this way.
And is that primarily the thing that separates people that can raise versus the ones that can't, or?
I think it's probably 3 things. I think folks who can raise typically are showing that they are currently executing on their business. They're not waiting for investment in order to execute on their business. I think the second thing is that the folks who can raise typically are better about how they run their process. They run it slightly tighter, more in parallel. And then I think this is the third one, like being able to tell the story that can convince the investor that this could be a very, very big business. I would say that a lot of what we do for Demo Day Prep is help our companies kind of fit that mold. I would argue that, sometimes the Valley represents itself as being able to help anyone accomplish their dreams. In reality, the Valley is an economic engine, and the people operate according to economic incentives, and you get to accomplish your dreams if you can align them with those economic incentives. And like, I would argue that maybe that sucks, but that's the reality. And so how do you make what you want to happen in the world happen while fitting into those kind of, those guidelines will give you access to a lot of money. If you don't need a lot of money, then great, don't sign up. But if you do need a lot of money to make this thing in the world that you want to happen, these are the kind of things you need to think about.
Yeah, the other thing too is if when you pitch your company or your idea, your product, and when you pitch your potential customers the same way you're pitching investors, which I have absolutely done over the course of many different companies, but you're completely missing it, right? Because it's a totally different audience with totally different motivations, as you say.
Yes.
They're trying to figure out, how do I maximize my time to get the money that I need to get out of this so that I can keep my job, in 7 years and not be, quietly sunsetted off to a new really cool project that it's not really that cool. And so you've got to tailor the message and the things that you're saying specifically to those people and the motivations that they have.
We often tell founders at YC, your investor pitch and your customer pitch are two very different things. Never combine them. And we help them with their investor pitch, but you as a founder should know your customers way better than anyone else, including any of us at YC. So your customer pitch, the thing that's on the front page of your website, the thing that you say to customers is often very different because investors are rarely actual customers or users of your product.
Michael, from Y Combinator, thank you so
Thanks
much.
So much.